everyone, I'm Dawn. Welcome to my channel. Thank you for visiting with me today. So today I wanted to talk about my son, and as the title says, when he was a baby, he was diagnosed with cancer. So when he was 7 months old, I was feeding him his lunch as usual, and afterwards I picked him up to like change him and get him ready. But when I picked him up, I felt just a mass in his abdomen on the right side, and I was already feeling like in me there was something going on with him. I couldn't really, but there was no symptoms. I just felt like there was something wrong, like I felt it. But then I felt that in his abdomen, so I immediately called his doctor. And I didn't have a car, so my best friend came and took me to the doctor, and she was feeling his stomach. And she thought it was odd because just 2 weeks prior, she had done a 6-month checkup, and everything was fine. And she palpitated his stomach and everything was fine then. So she decided to send us to the hospital. And first we were at one hospital, and I'm freaking out because I have no idea what's wrong. I feel a bump. Of course, I think tumor, cancer. I was right, but I didn't want to say it, until they told me what it was. So we go to the hospital, and he was anemic. The tumor was pushing on his kidneys, causing him to be anemic, and he was developing a black eye. So there were these interns who came into his room. Well, let's get to there in a minute. So they were trying to get blood, and they couldn't get blood. And finally, I just pushed the nurse away. I said, just give him a break. Give him a break. I know you need his blood, but you have to give him a break. You have to. And they did finally get blood. They had to have a doctor come in and get it from his groin, which was traumatic for him. Remember, he's an infant, a 7-month-old infant. And so then they put him in a room at this hospital. Then the interns come in, and they're like, well, he's anemic. You're just breastfeeding him. You have to give him more food. And I was giving him more food than breast milk, but they were really nasty with me. And I'm like, okay, I don't want to deal with these people ever again. So then a little while later, a doctor came in and said they were sending us over to the children's hospital. So, and they named the doctor. They said they want us to see the oncologist at the children's hospital. And I didn't know what an oncologist was at the time. Boy, do I know now. But at the time, I didn't know. And my sister knew. And I was afraid to ask her, but I know she was concerned when she heard this. So I rode in the ambulance with Marshall to the hospital, and he was put in a room on the 5th floor. Now, we're on the 5th floor elevator, or we're on the elevator. We get to the 5th floor, the doors open. I see this sign for the Ronald McDonald House. It's the Ronald McDonald House family room. And I was thinking, okay, Ronald McDonald House, that can't be good. And so we go to his room, and another intern comes in. This one was nice. And I just asked him, what is an oncologist? And then he told me, and you can kind of tell he wasn't comfortable telling me that that's what it was. And I was like, oh, dang it. So, and I'm freaking out. I'm 29 years old, and I'm a new mom. And I was thinking about when I was towards the end of my pregnancy and when he was born, I felt there was something wrong. There was something wrong. He acted fine. He ate fine. But I felt there was something wrong, and nobody would listen to me. And I would get poo-pooed and dismissed. Like, oh, you're just a first-time mom, so everything's going to scare you. And the doctor told me he probably had it when he was born. And had they listened to me and not just kind of dismissed me, someone would have discovered it, But anyway, so he ran through the ringer of tests. He had CAT scans, bone scans, biopsies, bone marrow biopsies, all kinds of stuff. And they came in and told me it's a cancer called neuroblastoma. Because of his age and the marrow involvement, he's stage 4. And that the doctor told me they don't know what causes it, but they do know how to treat it. And for a child his age, the prognosis is better than if he was older than a year. So me and my husband were just like, okay, let's get it started. Let's get him treated. And so he was in the hospital the first time for about 2 weeks. And some of this stuff is fuzzy for me. It was a really long time. It was 1999 when it started. He did great in treatment. Like, he got skinny and was really pale, but he didn't know he was sick. It was a party to him, and he was having fun. He had no idea he was supposed to be sick, so he was just a happy baby. And so he had to get a lot of chemotherapy, but it was, I don't want to use the word funny, but interesting. After his first round of chemo, like the next day, I was kind of feeling his stomach. We couldn't even feel the tumor anymore. It had shrunk that much from one round of chemo. So that made me feel hopeful. But then he got chemo a lot for, let's see, so that was in July, August, September, October, November. For about 5.5 months, he got, he received chemo, and we would go in if he needed a blood transplant or something. So he got lots of blood transplants, especially platelets, had a lot of chemo. And then it was time for his surgery, where they had to remove what was left of the tumor, and they had to remove part of his liver, which is fine. It grows back, regenerates. So they did that, and he still had to get bone marrow biopsies. I feel like they were monthly, but I may have that wrong. It's just all so jumbled up. And then after his surgery, I want to say about 6 months after his surgery, he had to start radiation. It probably wasn't 6 months though. See, it's just all jumbled up. No, he was still very young. So it was probably right after his surgery, right after he recovered from that. He went through radiation treatments, and they had to give him little tattoos on his tummy, like on the sides and in the front, little blue tattoos, and he still has them. I say they're planets as seen from a great, great distance, like Phoebe said about her little dot tattoo. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about from Friends. When I think her and Rachel were going to get a tattoo, and the needle barely touched her, and she was like, no. And she said, it's the planet Earth as seen from a great, great distance. So that's where I got that. It's stupid, I know. But so, yeah, so he had radiation. And again, they had to do the tattoos because they had to be in the same spot every time. So, and the tattoos are very small. He does have a scar on his belly about that long, where they removed the tumor. And he does have scars on his back that are kind of like, you can kind of see where he had his growth spurts because they're kind of spread out on his back, from where he had his bone marrow biopsies. And I'm trying to remember when he had his transplant. He had a stem cell transplant. They used his own stem cells. I remember they harvested his stem cells, and they had to go in with like they do a bone marrow biopsy, but with bigger syringes or whatever they were used. I don't know what the tools are called. And they had to harvest his bone marrow. And then for his bone marrow transplant, he had to be put in the hospital under isolation. And we had to scrub in and everything, which I totally understand. We don't want to get sick, because basically they give him so much chemo, it kills everything, because they're trying to kill the bad, which also kills the good. And then they start the transplant. And some of the chemo they gave him caused burns on his skin and stuff, but it never got him down. And they were like, it may seem like he's near death, but it's just the chemo and we're going to take really good care of him. I didn't experience a second of that kid being near death. And I'm like, me and his dad were so tired. I'm like, when is this kid going to realize he's sick? Like, we didn't want him to be sick, but we wanted to sleep. This kid wanted to party all the time. All the time. And, but he I thank God he did really good. It was, they treated him well. He had great nurses. So there were one or two that could go, but for the most part, he had great nurses. And when he had that one chemo that would burn his skin, like it would seep through his sweat and stuff and burn his skin, they would come in and bathe him every couple of hours. And they would try not to wake me up, but I would wake up and I would hear him in the tub giggling. Like, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. This kid, they wake this kid up to give him a bath and he's just giggling, and it was a blessing that he was so good with this. It relieved some of the stress I can imagine a lot of parents are under when their children are very ill and they're going through things like this. Because in a sense, I feel like we were lucky that he was so good-natured about everything. But in another sense, I would have just rather him never had cancer at all. But he had it, and that's just the way it is, and everything's fine now. But oh, excuse me, I burped. But he did really well with the transplant. Now, it didn't work. 3 months after the transplant, he relapsed. Now, it was a very small amount of cancer that had returned, what they detected in the bone marrow. But for his oncologist, it was too much, and he was going to treat it aggressively. So he treated it with something called ICE, which is, I think I'm getting this right, efosclamide, etoposide was the E1, and cyclopacide or something like that. And it worked. He was treated aggressively with that, and every 2 or 3 months or so he would have a bone marrow biopsy, and there would be negative and negative and negative until they were down to once a year, and then they finally considered him free of disease, NED, no evidence of disease. And he's been fine ever since. So from the time he was about 7 months old to maybe 3 years old, he was under pretty regular care. And as time went by, after 3 years old, his care started getting spread out. And now he's 23 years old, and he's doing great, and he's doing fine. But let me tell you a little bit about his cancer. So he had neuroblastoma, which is cancer of the sympathetic nervous system. It was a tumor that was attached to the top of his kidney on the right side, and it was also attached to his liver. When they did the chemo, it had shrunk significantly. It felt like about the size of a softball when I first felt it. And it shrunk down. I seem to feel like the doctor said it was just centimeters when they removed it, but because those parts were attached to the liver, he was able to remove it. But with the chemo and stuff, I don't know if detached is the right word, but it was no longer attached to the kidney. Some children who have it do lose a kidney. He did not lose a kidney. He now has some high frequency hearing loss as a late term side effect of the chemo, but even that is minimal now. It doesn't interfere with his life. And what else can I say about it? It's a heinous cancer. It's considered very rare, but it's more common now than it was when he was diagnosed. It's sad because every child we met up there who had it has passed away from it or complications of the treatment. And I don't see any of the parents anymore, but when we would see them, I would hate it when they would ask me how Marshall was doing, because he was really doing great. And I didn't want to tell parents who were losing or had lost their child to it that he's doing great. You know what I mean? And I stopped going to support groups and stuff, not because I didn't have anything worth sharing or whatever, but just because I felt so bad. It was like it was like one right after another they were passing away. Um, and it was very, very depressing. You know what I mean? And I can't imagine how those parents felt. If you are ever in a situation where your child is sick, stay off the internet. You know, maybe if the doctor suggests some websites, check those out. But all the horror stories, take with a grain of salt, because the internet was pretty new to us, but I would go on these websites and read all these horror stories about neuroblastoma and terrify myself, and I would just be a wreck. I would lay in bed crying because I was thinking, what if he dies, But I knew in my heart he wasn't. I get like that now too. Now he's 23 years old and it never goes away. People tell you when you have kids, you're stuck with them for 18 years. I feel so stupid. I'm sorry. You will worry about them forever. It never goes away. Even if they're never sick, you're going to worry about them forever. If you're any kind of parent. I know there are some parents in the world that don't like their children, like my mom. But for the most part, parents, you're stuck with them for the rest of your life. Maybe not physically in your house. And I don't mean that in a bad way, because I would never want to lose Marshall, but I'm worried about him, even though he's fine. He's fine. He's physically fine right now. He's fine. There's nothing wrong with him, but I still worry about it constantly. I still have nightmares about it, but he doesn't even think about it, but he didn't know, so. And he'll make light of it sometimes. Like when he was about, 12 or 13 years old, he was at his friend's house. And this kid was complaining because he had an earache, which, for a child that can be very painful. We're not comparing apples to oranges. The child with an earache is in pain. But Marshall was just like, yeah, that's terrible. I've had cancer. I'm like, Marshall, don't be that way. And one time he was stretching. He was even younger at this time. He was like 9. He was stretching like this. And the sister of his friend saw the scar and was like, oh, what happened? He goes, oh, had a little cancer. I'm like, Marshall, stop it. Just being a smart ass about it, So, but anyway, that's kind of our story. I know it was kind of jumbled up. You know how I do. I can't tell stories. But he's doing great. We're doing great. Everything is fine. I'm medicated. My doctor, my therapist told me that she believes I still have some PTSD from it. But, as long as Marshall doesn't have any PTSD from it, I will take it. I'm happy. I'm just sad that so many children die from it. It's very sad, and it breaks my heart. So, oh, and I have a story, and I'm going to try and tell it really quick. There was this guy on YouTube. He was friends with someone who was subscribed to both of our channels. And I had made a celebration video, a childhood cancer awareness video for my son, which I do every September. And, or I try to do every September. I think I've skipped a few times. He comes in and comments, we have a mutual friend that just lost somebody to cancer, and you're making a video like this bragging about it. You shouldn't do that. And I was like, bitch, what? And I said, I'm sorry, I didn't poll the entire internet before getting permission to do this video. I'm going to celebrate my son's life. I'm sorry someone else was lost to cancer, but this is my channel and this is about my son. I'm not minimizing anyone's loss, ever, ever. What do I look like without a crystal ball? Do I look like Katie Joy over here, minimizing children's pain? No, I'm not doing that. I'm just celebrating my son's life, and I'm entitled to do that. And I will continue to do it every year. That man has died. He died in a terrible car accident, and I'm sorry about that. But at the same time, you know, I'm sorry he's dead, but he should not have said that to me. I have the right to celebrate my son's life, and we'll do it every September, every October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August. I will do it. So anyway, that's it. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you learned something. If you have any questions, ask them below. I'm always happy to make another video where I answer everyone's questions. Oh, that's it. I'll talk to everyone later. Bye. Sorry I cried like a baby. I'm such a wuss.